thanks so much for joining me again on the No Higher Calling podcast. I have a familiar face. I have my friend Rebecca Grant. Thanks so much for joining me.
So happy to be here.
So you've joined me in the past for a few episodes. You were on not too far back talking about postpartum. That was so helpful. I really enjoyed all you had to share about that. And we're back again for another kind of health and wellness chat. I love asking people, what do you want to hear? I always kind of have a plan. I don't know, maybe I talk too much. I just always have things I want to talk about on the podcast. But it's fun getting feedback. Like, what do you want to know? What do you want to hear? And this topic was something that someone suggested. They wanted to know about nutrition in those really first few years, the baby and toddler season. And I was like, well, I know who to have come on and talk about this. So, dun da da, here's Becca.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. I will be the first one to say, huge learning journey for me. But I'm so thankful for what I've been able to learn along the way.
Well, in case someone's new to you, why don't you share just a little bit kind of about your family and where you're at and what you're doing?
Yeah, I am a wife to my wonderful husband of over 11 years, and he works in ministry. We're here in North Carolina, and I'm also a mom of four. And so it has been such a beautiful journey of a lot of learning along the way, personally and with my kids. And so I'm excited to get to just share a little bit of that. And then also from, I guess, more of the technical nutrition side of things. I'm a holistic nutrition coach, and I do work a lot with moms, but I also do work with kids as well, especially kids that are dealing with more in-depth issues.
Great. Well, I will be sure to post where people can find you down in the comments and all of that. And then I'm sure at the end, you'll give kind of a little recap of what you have to offer and different things, because you are just a wealth of wisdom to me personally and to so many others, even through the podcast. So thank you for that. But yeah, we're going to talk about nourishing foods for babies and toddlers, because I feel like usually when moms come to this season of life, we're like, man, we're setting a foundation. We've got these brand new humans. We want to get it right. And everybody's saying something different. What do we do? And I really think that was kind of the heart of the mom that asked the question of, I've got a baby. What do I need to do? What are the best things? And you really have some experience in that field and different things, just some advice to share that I think will be really helpful.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many voices and so much confusion around this, like what's the best and baby-led weaning and all the different things. And so I'd love to just share kind of maybe just some basics that you can kind of apply as you would in your lifestyle. But I want to actually start before baby is here, and actually before baby is even there, preconception.
Yeah.
Preconception actually really, really matters, is because your DNA, of course, is being imprinted, but your gut microbiome, your nervous system, all of that is being imprinted on baby. And the foods that you consume make a huge difference in, first of all, your own mineral stores in your body, but how your baby is going to come into this world. And let me first start off by saying, I don't mean that to scare anybody in any way. I didn't learn this till I was 3 to 4 babies in. Okay. But the more I've learned about it, the more I've been just really burdened to share more about it, because I've actually seen the studies of how much that is true. But things like, so in diet, good fiber, good fats, minerals. You're always going to hear me talking about minerals, but just those whole food based nutrients. And we just live in a world and in our society where we just eat a lot of processed food. And this is not against all processed food. I think we can have a balance, but especially if you are in the stage of life of preparing for children and then carrying a child, this is something that really should be a focus in your nutrition, even preconception, obviously carrying the baby. But when we come to, I guess that would walk us into breastfeeding, into like baby stuff, even breastfeeding. We obviously realize that what we eat affects baby, but our nutrients pass through. So breastfeeding really is, if it's possible, it really is just such a great option, really is the best option if it's possible, because it just passes on so many nutrients that are not even, it's just not the same. Breastfeeding is going to just pass on so many incredible nutrients to your baby. But beyond nutrients, you're passing on immune support. You're going to be affecting their gut microbiome. So this is really interesting. As I was studying this out, I was shocked to find out that babies are actually born with a leaky gut. You've probably heard of that term when you think of you as an adult, you're having digestive issues. Oh, I might have leaky gut. We hear that. But it simply means that their intestinal lining is not sealed. And so there's actually a concept of an intentional food order, even during breastfeeding, but definitely after breastfeeding, that will help seal the gut, seal and heal the gut lining so that food doesn't move across those membranes into the bloodstream. And that is what's going to mount the immune response. So let's touch on, like, you hear 100 first foods before one, and we're checking for allergens and things like that. We could take that approach, or we could take the approach of really nourishing and healing the gut, and then taking that as a first step. I believe that would be a lot more valuable than just throwing foods at the body to see what is going to trigger a response and what isn't going to trigger a response. Taking a little bit more of a proactive approach and recognizing kind of just the physiological way that your baby is made. So you're helping your baby so much breastfeeding when you are eating good nutrients, and that's amazing. But there are a few things that you can do even during breastfeeding that, let's cover that maybe 6 months to a year stage where baby maybe has some teeth now. My general rule, and this is just me, this is not like a set rule, is like, if they have teeth, they're probably ready to start chewing, or to start playing around with foods. If they don't have teeth yet, that's kind of my personal little guide, right? But that's not a hard, fast rule. But a lot of people are like, when should I give them foods? I'm like, well, do they have teeth yet? Because that's kind of like a major sign that maybe the body's starting to get ready there. But okay, have we done a little bit of work? Little bit of gut work. But we really need to recognize that a lot of the foods that are marketed for baby 6 months to a year, all the pouches and different things, are not super nutrient dense. And also they're generally not very fresh. They also have a lot of preservatives in them, which definitely could affect your baby. So this is true with us as well as with babies, but I think it's especially pronounced in babies. If something is not from a whole food, your body doesn't actually know what it is. It will digest it. It will do the best it can, but it has a hard time absorbing and utilizing those nutrients on the cellular level to actually nourish the body. It just kind of passes through the body. And we are setting the groundwork for your child's life. And I think a lot of times, I know I've done this, like, it's like, what's closest and what are they not going to choke on, right? And that's life. Like, I have 4 kids, like I get that. But the times where we can take the intention to be really intentional, there's some things that can really make a difference overall on your child's health. So I don't know about you, Brittany. It's been a learning journey for me. I definitely started with all like the wafers, and I know some of the things I'm going to say are going to seem like out there. I just want to like preface this with, like, I started with all the wafers and the little melting things and the rice cereal and the pouches and all the things, like first baby, even second baby, like conventional, right?
Yeah. No, it's so funny. I remember my first, so we did baby led weaning and I followed it to a T. So 6 months to the day, that was like the magical number. That's when we had the first meal. And my oldest first meal was pizza. Now it was homemade pizza.
Hey, oh my goodness, winning already.
Points for that one. But I look back now and I laugh that, like, her first introduction to the world of food was pizza.
And I'm sure she loved it.
She did. She did.
Yeah, I'm sure she did.
But yeah, you live and you learn. And then I love formats where moms can share, no judgment here. Like you said,
absolutely.
I've got 5 kids. That means sometimes, it's whatever's quick and easy because I just need food in the stomach. But I love that in a spirit of just trying to help each other and share what we've learned, because you and I have a bit of experience under our belt. I'm thankful for the moms that had a bit of experience under their belt that could say, hey, take it or leave it, but this is what I came to learn through my journey. And I'm thankful for that.
Yes. And even if you can't implement this perfectly, what we're talking about, obviously, I'm giving you the best of the best. And with my fourth baby, I've been able to do a lot more of this, but I haven't done it perfectly. Obviously, this would be an ideal. And some people, you'll see them and they do this, and that's great. You take what you can from it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive in. 6 months to a year, as we talked about. We really want to have a heavy focus on gut health, especially if C-section was part of the birth, or was birth. Extra important to really focus on gut health because they missed some of that good bacteria. And so that doesn't mean we have to give them any sort of probiotic necessarily, but this is where it'll come into play here. It's just something that we would really want to focus on their gut health. I know one thing that I want to address really quick that is maybe an old wives' tale, but I feel like a lot of people still do it is, just add some rice cereal into their bottle at night if you want them to sleep better. And I just want to give you an alternative because that really is not the best option, because we really don't want to introduce grains definitely before a year, really between a year to 2 years. I would really caution against introducing grains before a year because grains are a lot harder for your body to digest, for your stomach to digest. And so if we're already dealing with leaky gut issues, then we could just be causing inflammation in the gut, right? So you can try a healthy fat. So adding a carb is actually only going to kind of maybe throw off blood sugar balance a little bit. It might make them a little fuller, but utilizing a healthy fat, like some good grass-fed butter, and that might sound kind of weird, but try it. Babies love it. It takes a couple times. Like, you feed a baby something 10 times and then they're like, oh, okay. Right. But just little tiny pats. It's going to give them a really great fat source. It's going to keep them satiated, but butter is also a really great source of butyrate, which also helps seal the gut lining. So the little nutritionist in me is like, oh, win. So try a few bites of little grass-fed butter. Well, we want to focus on that gut health. The grass-fed butter is one way to do that. And then there really is, if you can follow this order, it's really helpful because we're layering on foods. We're starting with super healing foods, and then we're beginning to increase not only nutrient density, but diversity. Okay. So one of the best things to start with is meat stock. So this isn't even bone broth. This is like you boiled a whole chicken for a couple hours, maybe with some veggies in there. And then you want it to get enough that it pulls some of the gelatin out so that it's a little bit gelatinous. And you've got some of the collagen in there. That's incredibly nourishing for the connective tissues in the gut, the natural gelatin and collagen in there. And so you could do a little syringe, like you can, as they get older, you can use a spoon, but it could literally be a couple drops at 6 months, 7 months, like a little syringe, just a couple drops is going to be great. Especially if you feel like what you're eating is affecting baby. I know I was there with my first and definitely my second really, had some reflux issues, and I didn't know any of this at that time. So I cut out dairy, I cut out gluten, I cut out sugar, all the things, trying to figure out what it was. And it didn't really seem to help. It kind of just ended up resolving on its own. That's one way you can begin to help their gut as well, is just a little syringe there. Bone marrow. So this is something that might be a little harder to come by. And this is one of those things where I'm like, if you can do it, great. A meat stock, I feel like that's very doable. We can all do that. A couple of these things, bone marrow, you can get it from a butcher. You try to find a great source if you can, but you roast it. It's incredibly nourishing just for their whole body system, but as their little bones, literally bone marrow, as their bones grow. So you've probably heard the saying, like heals like. So a lot of people will take beef liver if they want liver support, right? Slight caution against beef liver, but great, but just in moderation. I know a lot of people will do desiccated organs or straight organ patés. I'm a little cautious with that now that I've done HTMA. I think that's okay in moderation. But bone marrow kind of comes right in there with that nose to tail eating, which really is so valuable to get more than just chicken breast or whatever. And then this one's going to sound crazy, Brittany, but I did this with my last one, Thomas. One of his first foods was sardines. So I know that sounds crazy, but this is the thing. Babies, they are going to learn what to eat, what you give them.
Yeah,
right?
what you give them.
And you start them with sardines. He ate sardines, and now I get
The
boneless.
funny thing. Yeah, the funny thing. My dad loves sardines. And I
Yeah.
remember being a little girl and he would be watching NASCAR and I'd climb up on his lap and he'd eat a sardine and he'd give me a sardine. And of course I ate it. It was my dad's favorite snack.
I remember eating them as a kid too. And then I've had to teach myself to like them. Little hint, barbecue sauce. I do like a tuna salad, but with barbecue sauce, mixed tuna and sardines together. Anyways, that's a whole other topic. I just gave it to him straight. You kind of mush it up a little bit. It's real soft. And yeah, he did fine with that. But sardines are packed with good fatty acids, healthy fats, and also really great minerals. And you don't have to worry about like other fishes. You have to worry about the high mineral or not mineral, high heavy metals like tuna and stuff like that. So sardines, the smaller the fish, the less the contamination with heavy metals. The bigger the fish, the higher the heavy metals. So sardines are just a super great option, and they're honestly really affordable. I get them at Costco. All the great things, safe caught and all the things, and they're very affordable. And I feel like that's a really doable option. Fish still is really great, even just white fishes. You always want to look for wild caught. And some people even go as far as cod liver oil, but those are also just we're starting to introduce some protein. Okay. So we've sealed the gut. We've added in some good nourishing, some egg yolks. I forgot to mention egg yolk. Egg yolk and bone marrow, kind of like a step 2, you could say. And that's just going to really nourish like the fats. Babies need fat for their brain, for every little function. They just need really good fat. So those egg yolks, the pasture-raised egg yolks, the bone marrow, the sardines. Now we're starting to bring in a little bit of protein, some white fishes. Even like if you have a really great quality bacon, that's easy for them to chew. It kind of almost melts in their mouth, like crumbles really easily if you're on the baby-led weaning. I guess I do tend to lean that way a little bit, but I'm not necessarily saying you have to do baby-led weaning. I do really think that babies can do a lot more than we give them credit for. They don't have to just have a pouch. And then this is where we can also start pulling in some pre and probiotic foods. Sauerkraut. Again, this is the first time I did this with my baby. This 4th time, gave him sauerkraut and he actually ate it. But you can start with the brine. Again, here's where the syringe comes in. Could literally just be a drop or 2. So I want to pause here for a second and talk about like if your baby is dealing with reflux, but things like eczema. My 3rd had eczema. And at the time I was gluten-free anyways because of health issues. And so we didn't notice so much. But when I weaned him, I didn't think about it. And he started eating gluten and he flared really badly, lots of eczema. And I knew it wasn't other issues. Like a couple things to check is if you have a lot of chlorine in your water, if you have allergens like laundry soaps and things like that. So there are a couple things to check first. But on the gut side of things, a lot of eczema can really be helped with some gut and some liver support. So pulling in things just like a couple drops of the sauerkraut brine, simple as that. And now Thomas, my littlest, he'll like eat handfuls of sauerkraut. So it's crazy. It really is what you start them with is what they will have a taste for. It blows my mind because my oldest is like, no way, Jose. I was raised on puffs. What are you talking about? So those things like that, the sauerkraut and other fermented foods, you can just do, you don't need huge doses. Like we don't have to go hog wild on this, just like little bits where you can pull them in. And then that's where we can start bringing in some of the other things that are a little bit harder to digest, some of those veggies. And we want to make sure we're having them roasted, sauteed. You can do raw veggies. I'm not saying you can't do them, but if we're focusing really on the gut health, and this is honestly for adults too, you want to cook your veggies, especially your cruciferous veggies, I would say. Obviously, you're not going to cook a cucumber and things like that, but your cruciferous veggies, even your leafy greens would be really great to saute. And you could do an immersion blender, blend that in with that meat stock we were talking about. Fantastic way to get a bunch of minerals and vitamins in that meat stock. We could even cook them in some of that meat stock, cook them in some of that bone broth and just infuse it with more nutrients. And then we can start moving into like maybe some fruits. So I know fruit is huge with kiddos and I don't think there's anything against it. I give my kids a lot of fruit, but some people are scared of the sugar content. And that's where you can go for lower glycemic. The reason I mention this is because a lot of the pouches are very fruit heavy. And so I do get a little cautious with pouches just as someone who really looks at blood sugar balance, because you are setting up their blood sugar pattern and glucose regulation, insulin regulation from a baby. So if they get a ton of instantaneous carbs and sugar as a baby, that is starting to kind of set a little bit of a pattern that can shift anytime. I'm not saying like, oh, you start here, that's just like it's a sentence the rest of their life. But that's one thing where I'm really cautious about is like a lot of times there is not much protein in baby foods. So we really want to make sure that if we're doing fruits, we're just pairing at least a fat, but maybe a little bit of protein along with that. If your baby does have a lot of gut issues, this is where stewing fruits, berries, apples, not only makes them easier to digest, but actually like pectin comes out, and pectin is really helpful in binding in the gut. And so stewed fruits can be really great for your gut and actually be easier to digest and honestly easier for baby to eat. Applesauce, and, stewed things like that. Scrambled eggs, of course, are an easy one. We don't want to overcook them. We want to almost leave them slightly undercooked. We want the whites to be cooked. So one little tip here is if you want to take the extra step, I don't always do this, you can separate your yolks and your whites, and you can cook the whites pretty well. And at the very end, add the yolks on top. So they're just slightly cooked, but they maintain the nutrient status and don't destroy the enzymes. And you can just add that in at the top, and it looks pretty much the same, nice yellow eggs. If you're really wanting to go the extra mile with your scrambled eggs on the nutrient quality, you can do that. And then pulling in a little bit more probiotics like yogurt. If you're cautious with dairy, I would just encourage you to find the best quality dairy. For me personally, after study and knowing that I found a really good source, I utilize raw dairy, but I've also used, if you know that dairy is not an option or you don't have a good source, I've also utilized Mount Capra goat milk. And you can get that in a powdered form. You just add it to warm water. And so you can do that as far as milk goes. But yogurt is fermented, and just that's where I would look for. If you're an Aldi shopper, they have a fantastic organic Greek yogurt that is cheaper than regular yogurt at the regular grocery store. Like win, win, win. And then from there, like this is a 6 months to probably 18 months, 6 to 12 months, we're tying these in, and then we're just starting to increase the diversity of the fruits, vegetables, meats. So you probably noticed that I didn't bring any grains in yet. At about 1 to 2 years, we can shift to now we're solidly at a 1 year, maybe between 1 and 18 months. We're continuing these above foods. Of course, I'm sure we're having other foods in there too, but really those 6 to 12 months, if you had to focus on one section, I would say setting them up with this foundation from 6 to 12 months as close as is doable for you for this list is so good. So good for their gut and just their future health. And then 1 to 2 years, you can keep continuing with those foods, but that's when we start introducing some properly prepared grains, which would be things like sprouted or fermented, if possible. So nowadays, it's so accessible. You do not have to make your own sourdough. If you're making your own sourdough, that's amazing. Just, we want to make sure we're getting a good ferment in there, but you can buy sprouted grains, bread at the store. And that's just a really great option that's going to be easier on digestion and actually tends to have more nutrients in it as well. And then after this is when if you're going to be introducing possible allergens, nuts, peanut butters, we've really built that solid gut foundation. Now we know it's not just, oh, we have a leaky gut and who knows what is going to trigger this. It just gives you a little better, truer picture of what actually an allergen and what might be we need some more gut support. So I hope that kind of helps looking at like introducing all these foods and, oh, they can't have this, they can't have that, they can't have this, they can't have that. It's very possible that they can't. Let's just back up a little bit further and see what might be causing that. Looking at the gut.
Yeah, no, and I think that's helpful to kind of hear the why of, I heard, delay grains. And I did, but I didn't really know the why. So it's really interesting to hear all that about the leaky gut and how kind of setting up that foundation, letting their little body kind of progress and progressing along with it.
Yes. And you think about, there's many other factors, like they're not born fully with the iron capacity or the vitamin D capacity. And it's actually like, it's intentional. It's part of their process and their growing. And so we follow the way God created their body and we work with it and are just really intentional with it. just to finish up that 1 to 2 years, this is also an area where we really want to make sure that we are setting up good blood sugar balance. I kind of did refer to that just a minute ago, but one really easy way to do this is just to ensure that our meals, and especially snacks, a lot of times snacks for kids tend to be, let's just say it, goldfish. And they're just like not macro balanced. And if you don't know what I mean when I say macro, it's just the three macronutrients are protein, carbs, and fats. And we really do want to, especially kids, we really need all three. As adults, you might be more careful about what you're combining and how you're combining it. Kids need all three, especially at this age. And so we want to make sure that we have a good protein, fat, and carb balance. And then especially when it comes to those snacks, just a really simple thing to ask yourself is, where's the protein? What's my protein? I call it a protein anchor. I want to have a little anchor for every little snack and meal. Does that mean you can't ever pop a couple of grapes in your mouth without eating a protein? No. But if we're going to be eating a significant amount of a carb, we want to balance that a little bit. And I know I still struggle with this sometimes, but this is where like cheese sticks and beef jerky, if your kiddo is old enough to eat beef jerky, like there's a lot of simple things. You don't have to overthink it. Yogurt, fantastic protein to just pull in there. And one more thing, 1 to 2 years, kids are starting to get a mind of their own a little bit too. And so this is where we can a lot of times fall into the trap of going for the healthy versions of snacks. And let me just say, that's always a better option. Like, I'm not trying to downplay that at all. Like, always a better option to avoid artificial dyes and all the things. But if we're not careful, it can kind of start to replace the whole foods that maybe we were so careful with. I'm just saying this because I found myself doing this. Like, I was so careful for 6 to 12 months. And now my baby's older and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. And that's okay. That's life. But sometimes even the healthy snacks are never going to be as nutrient dense as the whole food version of that snack. Right. And so it's also just going to help us avoid extra processed sugar and things like that as well. So yeah, I'm curious, Brittany, as you've gone along in your kiddo journey, what have you found to be, I have a 2 to 3 year range if you want to chat through that, but what have you found to be your go-tos with helping your kiddos eat as balanced as you can?
Yeah. Well, I think in my just homemaking journey in general, I've really kind of shifted from what I thought healthy was. And I think I've even had you on the podcast to talk about this. I thought it was just salad. And then I realized, like, wow, I'm really missing a lot by only having this. So our journey in our eating in our home in general has really just been more, like you said, to get these macronutrients, to make sure that we're eating whole foods, and even things that are splurges or treats. I love to cook from scratch. So I've been trying to, even if I can cook it from scratch, it's better than getting the store-bought version.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of been this, I hate to use the word evolution, but almost an evolution of, growing in that. As far as my kids, I think normal life for me is very home-based, we have our rhythms, and I've done well at eating healthy and eating well and getting these nourishing foods in those seasons. It's when life gets chaotic that my personality just tends to get a little overwhelmed if I don't have the time to prepare, I think is what it is. I'm the kind of girl that, like, okay, 4 days out of the week we stay home, but then we have that one excursion day, but I plan for that. I prepare for that. I'm good to go. We've got our healthy foods and snacks. But if I'm in a season of busy, I tend to get very like, there's only so much me. There's only so much time. There's only so much prep work I can do. And so then sometimes I swing to the pendulum of the other and, like, fine, we're just eating McDonald's, for the whole week because we're busy. Which I will throw in McDonald's here as much.
Hey, it's probably a lot better there.
It's a step up. It's still way down the totem pole. It's a step up. But I think that's my thing, is just in those seasons. And you talked about it. There are different seasons that call for frozen dinners or drive through. And we've got to be okay with that. But I think I've learned, when it's not that season, then do what I can. Support what I can, take care of what I can. And then when the busy time comes, do the best I can. But it's okay. Stressing about it is not going to help the fact that I'm also eating chicken nuggets, you
Right,
know?
right. Yes. I love how you shared that because we can get in an all or nothing mindset
Mhm.
and either we're doing so well or not doing well. I actually recently came through a very busy season where we ate a lot of frozen pizza and I was like stressing myself out like this isn't good. And I was like, wait, I just need to make a simple plan. But that's where I come back to like when you can kind of think 80-20, and we just got to make sure it truly is 80-20. When you really are eating well, it gives you the grace to walk through those seasons where it's not your ideal meal plan, and it gives you the margin to be able to walk through that and that not hugely affect your family's nutrition, right? Um, I know that it can be easy for us to go all or nothing and kind of like either give up completely and just like whatever, or sometimes I can tend to be a person like you give me the plan, I will follow the plan. And then if I fail from the plan, then it's just all over. But I will like lock in on this plan and set unattainable goals for myself. So as I'm sharing all this, I want to be careful to say like, it's okay if you can't do every single thing. But in the same breath, I do want to say these first couple of years of your baby's life, you really are setting a foundation for so many systems in their body. And it is a time to care and be intentional. And I know I work with some moms and kids, and it's like, well, my kid just won't eat that. And I just want to address that really quick because
Yeah.
I have a picky eater. I do. And I'm like, boy, you have how do I have a picky eater? We all have a picky eater, right? But
Mhm.
you're the mom. You're the mom. And they are going to eat what you give them eventually, right? If you are having all the processed snacks over here, but you're like, oh, I'm trying to force this, um, that is going to be a very hard thing for them to navigate. So I'm not saying it has to be all or nothing, but if we're having both readily available, sometimes we do really have to cut some things out and
Mhm.
really make a shift. And if that's what needs to happen, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but perhaps we can start choosing some of the healthier options for some of those, but really move to the whole foods. The
Yeah.
language we use about it can really make a difference too. Um, the good food, bad food language. I know that when I first started teaching my kids, this was like, no, that's bad. That's bad for you.
Mhm.
And there is an element of truth to that, but especially if you have older kids and kind of be like, I want the bad food, right? Give me the bad
Yes,
food. I
right?
don't even like
Take
that.
it.
Like,
I
I
don't care.
want some tacos. Good. I don't care if it's bad. Give me the bad food. So what I've switched to, even for myself, but especially for my kids, instead of using the good, bad labels, let's really focus on, is this nourishing? What is this doing for my
Mm.
body? What does my body need? And then how is my body going to feel from this food? Is this going to build my body up and nourish my body, and my body's going to be able to absorb these nutrients? Obviously, a 2-year-old isn't quite going to understand that. You have to make
Mhm.
this age appropriate.
Yeah.
But my kids, my littles even know, like they get a bunch of sugar at church or something, and they'll have like a little tummy ache, and they still don't quite have the discipline to not get it next time, but they'll be like, oh, that candy made me feel yucky, right?
Yeah.
So even raising their awareness of how do you feel 30 minutes, an hour, that sugar drop after you eat that, as compared to when we ate well, and just
Mm.
helping them to learn their own body is valuable, and to have that mindfulness with their eating as well. A couple other things, especially if you have picky eaters or little eaters, would be things like, it really does take time to know, for your body to know if it actually likes the food or not. And that's an easy
Mhm.
one for us mom to say, it takes 20 times for you to know if you actually like that or not. But there is some truth to that. And
Mhm.
then also, you don't have to know all the reasons why a certain food is good for you, but especially with littles, it's like, oh, you got to eat your green foods. It's what makes your bones grow really hard so you can run really fast, right? And you may be familiar with some of that already and
Oh,
already be
yes.
utilizing that.
Yeah.
But and we got to eat, this because it's going to help us. And it's okay if you don't know all the reasons. You can literally just go back to strong and fast, and that will connect probably every time. But as they get older, you want to dive in a little bit.
Right? That's what my son wants to be, a superhero. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
he'll be strong.
Yeah.
And now my 3-year-old's like, brother, you haven't eaten your chicken. Don't you want to be fast and strong like Superman?
Yeah, exactly. You got to eat that protein.
Yes.
Yeah. And then just the ultimate is to come back to is like, God made this for us to
Mm.
eat, look at what did God originally create? God made this on purpose for us. This is what he left on earth for us to eat. So you can
Mhm.
even add a little spiritual aspect to it as well. Um, but one last thing with a picky eater, sometimes I found this in as I do HTMAs with a lot of people, but especially with kids, when we have a really picky eater, it can actually be a little bit of an intuitive response by the body that has an impaired digestive system, that it will naturally steer towards foods that it thinks is easier to digest. A lot of times, like if you have a
Mhm.
kid that really doesn't like meat, and has a hard time, digesting proteins and things like that, a lot of times we can be dealing, this is just like an if, I'm not saying this is what it
Mhm.
is, but we can be dealing with some low, stomach acid or low zinc and things like that. And so if you have really been going on the healthy train for a while and you're like, I just, no matter what I do, sometimes it's worth looking a little bit deeper and seeing, are we deficient in some things that are helping us actually absorb the nutrients out of these food? Because sometimes the body will actually take that little bit of a protective, intuitive thing and avoid certain foods and give you a
Mhm.
distaste for certain foods. Just interesting, especially when there is good food going on, and it's like,
Mhm.
why won't they eat it? But
Yes.
yeah, just to reiterate that this truly does make a difference, not just for now and any health issues you might be seeing with, allergens or skin eczema, for example, or
Mhm.
something like that. But this truly is going to affect their future health, because you are setting up, as we talked about, their gut. 80% of the immune system is housed in the gut. So we're setting up immune system responses. This can play into autoimmunity and things like that. It's going to affect their brain health, especially those fats, their brain health, their cognitive function, their memory, their cognitive processing,
Mhm.
hugely reliant on those healthy fats. And so that's a huge factor there. Their blood sugar, as we talked about with, the macro balance there, but then even their hormones, there's the way that their body will handle stress, and because of that, the way that their hormones will fluctuate and develop and find a healthy rhythm and pattern in their metabolism. That really does start down. We just don't think about that sometimes. And I'm not saying that to guilt anyone, like if you don't do it right, but when it just can give us that much more motivation, not from a guilt
Mhm.
standpoint, but like, wow, what I'm doing really matters. And even if I can't
Yes.
see it and they don't recognize it, I know I'm doing them a huge service. And
Mhm.
I don't want to end this on a morbid note by any means, but I do feel passionate about sharing this because there are just more and more studies coming out, and it's our generation that is the first generation that is expected to outlive their children. And that's a
Mhm.
horrible statistic. And when I first heard that, I thought that couldn't be true, and I had to look into it. And the childhood disease rates are
Mhm.
unprecedented for our region in the world that we live in. And so there is a reason to take this seriously, because the choices that you make do make a difference. And like we said, it does not have to be perfect. But when you can commit to whatever your ratio is of really prioritizing really
Mhm.
nutrient dense foods, that is just going to set your child up in so many different ways in their life and their physical wellness as
Yeah.
they grow and just develop and progress through their life.
Yeah. Well, this is so true. And like you said, usually mama is kind of the one that's in control of the
Mm,
foods in this stage. They're not old enough to take care of that themselves. And so even things like just equipping yourself and learning these things.
mhm,
I think I mentioned actually on the episode that we had done a few months back that we had come through a unit study about the human body. And
mm,
obviously, like I'm homeschooling my kids, so I'm teaching them, but this is a topic for another time. But one of the beauties of homeschooling is that mama learns right side
yep.
alongside the kids. And let me just tell you, my education the second time around is so much better than the first time. But it was so fascinating to learn about all of these different systems in the body, how they work, why God
Mm,
designed them. And we kind of progressed that way. We went through all the body systems.
yeah.
Then that kind of led us, the last one was kind of the immune, the lymphatic system, which led into some diseases. And then it ended with exercise and nutrition. But I thought it was an interesting
Mm,
progression. And even just in this topic, what did that do for me as mom? It made me realize it's not just we're hungry, fill the stomach, so it's not hungry anymore and we're happy and we
mm,
can move on with our life. But actually, like you said, God designed the food that we intake is for specific purposes, and different things help different systems and help different things and
Hmm.
keep it all going. And it is such a beautiful design of our creator. And when we kind of align with that, no longer am I, as the mom and the thinker and the chooser of so many of these things, just, you mentioned goldfish. Over here we have jumpies, which is
Okay.
basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're little like kangaroo crackers,
Oh,
jumpies.
that's so
So
cute.
no longer is it just like, you know what, they're hungry, so we're just jumpies every day. But I'm
Mhm.
thinking through these things. And then as you said, as they get older, as they get a little more understanding, you can kind of come in. And I've been able to do that with some of my older ones. And I love how you mentioned that, like, not good food, bad food. I have a history of some eating disorders in my teenage
Mhm.
years. So I try to be careful with how I talk about food. So I
Mhm.
have a lot of girls in my home. So I try to be careful about that. But I live just coming in with, hey, this is how God created our bodies. This is how God created food. This is how we can pair these together, really to set ourselves up for good health. Just stewarding that aspect of our
Yes.
lives well so that we can do all the things. And you're given these different statistics. And I was actually talking to an older lady recently who was talking about health, and just this wasn't taught in her generation, and she's trying to do better, but now she's in her
Mhm.
50s, and
Mhm.
thinking like, I don't want to just be a present healthy mom for my kids. I want to do that for my grandkids. I want to be able to run in the backyard
Yeah.
and play with them and keep up. And sometimes that just looks like little daily decisions here and there when I can, um just taking care of what God's given us.
Yes, that I'm sure you are familiar with consistency over perfection.
Yeah,
And if you shoot
exactly.
for perfection, you will probably fail. But if you shoot for consistency, pick a few of these things and shoot for consistency, that will take you so much further every time. And you will be amazed. I think we've been talking a lot about the physical, but the physical body greatly affects the mind. And if you're dealing with a lot of really angry outbursts and maybe even like temper tantrums or just a lot of those things actually can really be a lot of two big factors there are blood sugar balance and then nutrient depletion. If the body doesn't have good nutrients, there's going to be a disconnect in the mind and the body. And so yes, for their physical well-being, but for their mind and body as well. And you guys will both everyone will benefit from these choices. Maybe not at first be seen, but I know that you will begin to see these shifts that just begin to happen on several different levels. And the beauty of it is, that you're not going to go wrong nourishing the
Mhm.
body in a very holistic way. And it just gives you some confidence and be able to come at this
Mhm.
from a place of peace, just because you're like, I know this is the best thing to do. I might need a few tips on how, but we'll get there. I got a starting point and we'll just keep learning on the journey.
Yeah. No, and I really appreciate you coming to share all this and just share the wisdom that God's given you, because I think, as moms, we want nothing more than to make the right choices for our kids, to
Mhm.
set them up well, to see them be healthy and to thrive. And so I'm always, I told my daughter the other day, I was like, the longer I live, the more I realize I still have so much to learn, and I always want to be teachable. So yeah, I'm 5 kids in, but this is still helpful. And I know that on the podcast, there's people from all different seasons and stages of life. And I think, when we come to this season, we do want to do it well. We want to help them. And
Yes.
if we can give you some tools to do that, maybe a place to start, or even just something to think about and to pray through, like, what does this mean for me and my
Mhm.
life and my kiddos?
Yes.
Then I think it's time well spent. So thank you so much, Becca, for joining and for sharing all of this.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for letting me come and just share a little bit.
Yeah, and I will share the links where people can find you, but real quick, if you just want to kind of give a recap of some of the different things that you offer and have
Yeah.
available.
Yes. So, like I said, I'm a holistic nutrition coach, which means I work with nutrition and all of that, but it's based on a functional lab called HTMA, which helps us not be guessing at what the right food is for you, or what maybe if you need a supplement or whatever it might be. We get to actually see exactly where your body is at, what the imbalances and the deficiencies might be, and bring your body back into a balance so that you can go from surviving and frazzled to thriving and moving on calmly and confidently through your life. So would love to help you, your kiddos, whoever I can help.
All right. Awesome. Well, I will be sure to share that with the audience. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Yay.